Hey everybody, welcome back to Kielbasa Corner, where today I am bringing you an all-new Age of Anderson original recipe sausage. I am making this smoked jalapeno and cheese sausage that everyone's gonna love. So let's get started. My lean meat for this sausage is once again gonna be venison. I've got some nice shoulder meat from the buck that I got last season, and I'm gonna get this all trimmed up and free of that silver skin, and then I'm gonna weigh that up and add pork fat to it. And this is some pork belly off a little hog that we raised. A little black hair on there still. Anyway, I'm gonna be going with roughly a 2 parts venison to 1 part pork belly on this. I'm shooting for around 30% fat content, and since this isn't pure fat, it does have a little bit of rib meat left on there. 2 parts to 1 should get me really close to 30%. Let me get this cleaned up. I've also got some other trimmings around here somewhere that I'll add in. Then we'll get everything weighed up and grind it down. My meat and fat blend is ready to go. This stuff is all icy cold. It's actually partially frozen, and that's gonna make it nice and easy to get through the grinder cleanly. So, now it's time to go dig my grinder parts out of the freezer, and wake up gnarls, and grind this down. I'm gonna put kind of a fine grind on this one today. Not too fine. I'm running it 1 pass through this 4.5mm plate. Even though I did just get this 3mm plate that I'm kind of excited to try out. What can I say? When you're a sausage man, it's the little things that get you excited. Huh? Yo soy sincero y no me agüito fácil. Si en el baile solo quieres saludar. Pero si un día tú sientas lo que siento, pues yo soy libre y tengo curiosidad. Y si un día el mundo se acabara, bailar contigo sería mi voluntad. Al cabo que gocé muy bien mi vida y estar contigo es mi felicidad. Now I'll get one final weight on this ground meat, and then I'll work up the spice bill. I've gathered all my seasonings, so let's take a look at what I've got here today. And I'm not going to put up the amounts that I am using because I am using just a random amount of meat today. But I will put a 5-pound recipe up here and a 1 kilogram recipe up here, as well as down in the description of the video, and you can scale those up or down for whatever you need. So let's get started with the salt, and any plain non-iodized salt will work. This one is a fine-grained sea salt. And if you're using the 5-pound recipe and using spoons to measure your salt, you're gonna wanna make sure that you're using a fine-grained salt as well, because if you're using a coarser grained salt, it might not come out exactly the same. I've got a little garlic powder here. And if you want to use fresh garlic, just use twice as much and either puree or press that so it's very, very fine. And here I have some freshly ground cumin seed and the same amount of freshly ground coriander seed. And I did toast both of those before I ground them, but that is optional. I've got some finely ground marjoram. And this is what is really gonna set this recipe apart. This is some ground Mexican oregano. And I get this stuff as these dried little leaves, and then I grind those when I get ready to use it. So they have a very potent and very aromatic flavor, and it does taste a lot different than Italian oregano. Now, could you use Italian oregano here? Sure you can, and that's probably gonna be great, but it is gonna taste different than this recipe. That is where I'm gonna get most of my flavor from. I've got some non-fat powdered milk for binder, just the plain stuff you can get at the grocery store. And I've got my cure, and this is some pink cure #1. Now for my liquid today, instead of beer like I usually use or water, I'm gonna be adding in this hot sauce. And you can use whatever type of hot sauce you like here. Just make sure that the first ingredient is peppers and not vinegar. If you use one that is too vinegary, it can have a bad effect on the texture of your sausage. And this is a jalapeno and cheese sausage, so I'm gonna need some high temperature cheese. This is high temperature cheddar that I'm using today, but I won't add this in until just before I stuff the sausage, so the little cubes don't get too beat up when I'm mixing it, and they don't sit and absorb a bunch of moisture and kind of degrade while this is curing overnight. So we'll set that aside for now. And as for the jalapenos, I always use dried jalapenos rather than fresh jalapenos in this type of sausage. And that is because these dried jalapenos have a much stronger, more concentrated jalapeno flavor, and they won't leave a little wet pocket in your sausage where they end up sitting. So always dried jalapenos, and these do taste great. So now I'll get all of my dry ingredients blended together. I'll leave the jalapenos out for now and add those in while I'm mixing this. All right, we'll get Big Beatrix loaded up. When it comes to the jalapenos, I don't weigh or measure them. I just add them in as I'm mixing this and use my eyes to tell me when enough's enough. So the only question is, how hard do you want to go, tough guy? Now, whether you're using a big mixer like this, or a manual mixer, or even mixing this by hand, you want to make sure you really beat the heck out of it until it gets nice and shaggy looking and very sticky. That stickiness is what lets you know that you're going to get a nice tight bind in your sausage. Now, that's not so important in a fresh sausage, but in a smoked sausage like this, you really want to get a good bind. So if you're mixing this by hand, it's going to be hard and it's going to take a long time, but just keep at it. You can do it. I didn't go really heavy on the jalapenos. I just want to make sure that whenever I grab a bite-sized bit of this, I get at least one piece of jalapeno, if not more, in it. So wherever I grab, I can find a little bit of jalapeno, and that's good enough for me. We'll get this covered up. And now this goes into the refrigerator overnight to let those jalapenos hydrate and to let that cure work its magic. And we will be back here bright and early to smoke this cheesy chode. Now my meat has cured overnight, so it is time to add in the high temperature cheese and stuff and smoke this. And again, I use this high temperature cheese because it has a higher melting point than regular cheese, so it won't break down when I'm smoking the sausage. Regular cheese tends to break at a low temperature, meaning the solids and the fats separate, and it leaves you with sort of a little pocket there with a grainy bit of cheese that the fat has run out of. but this will stay nice and creamy. And I add this in by sight, just like I do the jalapeños. I think they recommend using 1 pound of cheese to 5 pounds of meat. That seems all right to me, a little cheesy for my taste, but you can go ahead and put in as much or as little as you like.
Y así suena la frontera Bugalú.
Ay, no fue la ola que me tumbó, fue tu linda cara y tu cadera que me tiró. Ay, no fue la luz.
I forgot to say bright and early on another beautiful sausage Sunday. And that's because it's not bright and early anymore, because late last night I found out that I didn't have enough casings to get this job done. So I had to wait until the store opened and run a town over and get some casings this morning. And these are natural hog casings. I think these run 30 to 32 millimeters. They're packed in salt, so normally what I do is rinse them off and soak them overnight in cold water. But since I'm running behind, I'm using the alternative technique of rinsing them and then soaking them in lukewarm water for about an hour, and that usually gets the job done. And with these 30 to 32 millimeter casings, I use a 20 or 25 millimeter stuffing horn. I think that is 5/8 of an inch, perhaps. But the point is to use a horn that is slightly smaller than the casings you're using, and that's going to help keep you from overstuffing the casings. So now that I do have my casings, my meat mix is ready, and Corn Pop is here to take care of any air bubbles that develop in the sausage. It's time to lock and load and crank out this tempting tube.
Chale, Chuyito.
Welcome into the sausage closet, where we have moved from stuffing to drying. This is the first step in smoking the sausages. I want to get the casings nice and dry and start to slowly bring that meat up to temperature. So I'll leave them here in the closet for an hour. I've got my fan going on them. From here on out, this is going to be a very slow and steady process. Even though I got a late start, I don't want to rush things, because that can lead to an inferior sausage. So we'll let them hang out here, and in the meantime, I'll go and get the smoker ready. Now we are out of the closet.
I'm so glad to be here.
And into the smoker. And the first stage out here is going to be continued drying of the casings. So I want my smoker to be down around 110 degrees Fahrenheit. I'll have to leave the door cracked to hit that temperature. And I'll leave them out here for 30-45 minutes until those casings get nice and dry. At this point, there's no smoke and there's no water in the water pan, because I want to get those real nice and dry before I bring in some humid smoke to start penetrating into those sausages. And with this gas smoker, it will take 30 or 45 minutes down at low temperature for my wood pellets to catch and start smoking. So I go ahead and put them in right now. And by the time those casings get dried out, we'll have some smoke going for them. It's been 30 minutes. Those casings are getting pretty dry. Yeah, these ones are very dry over here. So I can just now start smelling the smoke wisping up. So I'm gonna get some water down into the water pan and bring the temperature up of these to start smoking them. And smoking happens at temperatures down below 150 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the time when the smoke can actually get in and penetrate the meat before the outside cooks and the smoke just gathers on the outside. So my smoke schedule today will be 2 hours at 130 degrees Fahrenheit, followed by 2 hours at 140 degrees Fahrenheit, and then I'll finish smoking for 1 hour at 150 degrees Fahrenheit. At that point, I'm gonna take the sausages out of the smoker and finish them off in a water bath. And I did recently upgrade this smoker with this temperature monitor. This is a Chef's Temp ProTemp S1, and with the app and Bluetooth, this lets me monitor the temperature of the smoker from anywhere in my house, which does cut down on the babysitting I've got to do out here. Now that first smoking stage is done. They're starting to get some good color, so I'm going to raise the temperature up to 140 and give them a couple more hours, and by that time they should get really nice and dark color, and then we'll hit that final smoking stage. Let's take a quick look. Ooh, beautiful red color now, so we're getting ready to move up to final stage smoking. That's 150 degrees Fahrenheit for 1 hour. Then I'm gonna get these guys out of here and into that water bath.
An hour later.
Alright, get these down into the water bath. I've got my sous vide set at 176 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm gonna poach these to an internal temperature between 152 and 160 degrees Fahrenheit. I do set the temperature a little higher than that because I want them to finish quickly and preserve as much of the moisture in these as I can. Now this is going to happen very quickly, probably 15 minutes at the most with sausages of this size, so I'm going to get a cold water bath ready to go, and when these are done, we'll get them right out of here and into some cold water. Looks good to me. There we go. And it is very important to get those things cooled down just as quickly as you can. Stop any carryover cooking and preserve that nice consistent texture all the way through your sausage. Looks pretty good. No air bubbles in this one at least. And no fat has run out because I didn't get them too hot. If you get them over 175, 180 degrees at any point, the fat starts to melt and run out of the sausage, and nobody wants that. So I'll leave them down here in the ice bath for 10 minutes or so until they start to get cool down into the core. Then we'll hang them up and take one last look at them for the evening. Back in the sausage closet for one final hang, just to get them dried off again. And when you poach them like that, the color does get a little weird, a little pallid. But don't worry, that bright red color is going to come back once they dry out. It has fully penetrated into those sausages, and it's not going anywhere. So we'll leave these guys in here until they get nice and dry, And I'll bag them up and put them in the refrigerator, and we'll try these out tomorrow. There we go. They look great. Looks like I got plenty of smoke in them. Let's snap one of these off here and check out the grain. Beautiful. Check that out. You can really see all those chunks of cheese. Looks like I got plenty of bits of jalapeno in there. A lot of little fatty bits mixed in with the lean, so I know that didn't melt out of there. Looks perfect. Smells great. Of course, what really matters is the taste. And these are fully cooked, so I could eat this cold, but surely this is going to be better off the grill. Look at that beauty. Let's give this thing a try. Check out that bite. Wow. It's cheesy, spicy, and smoky. It's got a really great snap to it, and it's nice and juicy from the fat in there. That is all great. The cumin and coriander are there, but they're not too forward. That would make this taste like a chili dog, which would be great too. But in this, it's really the marjoram and the Mexican oregano that make this sausage sing. They give it a wonderful aroma and a brightness of flavor that's really unlike any sausage that I have ever made or even tried. It is unique and delicious. In the past, I've added jalapenos and cheese to pre-existing recipes, and that usually ends up with very good results. But with this recipe, I've crafted the flavor profile around the jalapenos and cheese to what I think are even better results. And that is the beauty of making your own. Thanks for watching. Oh.